Hello from Dubai. I'm Rachel Price and welcome to my podcast, Not Just Making the Tea, a show where we talk about the realities of our career and life choices whilst made at school and college. It's all about celebrating the parts that don't go to plan as much as those which do. With every chat, we explore what life skills there are to be learned and how they can influence and help us to succeed. This season, the focus is on key skills and the attributes which we all need to be more successful in our everyday lives. I hope that you enjoy listening, find the topics thought-provoking, entertaining, and that they add some positive vibes to your day. So on that note, let's get started with today's topic. Why are social interactions so critical for mental and physical health? We're now living in a time where the world is turning to technology every day more and more. There is a cell phone in nearly every pocket, cars are running on electricity, and now TVs are actually even considered as smart. The process of receiving and delivering education has jumped onto the bandwagon of technology also. With thousands of options and ways to gain an education online, is it only a matter of time until the online education becomes the only way to gain an education? But my big question is whether online education is the right answer for us as human beings. Discussions can be made from both sides, but what it is ultimately coming down to is an individual's preference in how they receive their education and their understanding of its impact upon their health. We all learn in a variety of ways. Some of us prefer online courses, others prefer the classroom setting, and some of us like to have a mixture of both. And there are pros and cons for all these different forms of learning, which means that there's no one correct way of teaching and learning. But in a world where nearly everything is now with a technological focus, and with the current circumstances of COVID, online learning may be, for the first time ever, the best way or even the only way to go. Throughout this podcast, I will take a stance for face-to-face or a blended learning system, rather than a solely online education system, as I talk about some of the societal impacts and effects it has. This is just my opinion, and you're very welcome to have yours. However, there are several significant factors that have played into my decision, mainly what I've seen from my own experience of being in the classroom during the past few weeks, but also what I've heard, or rather, what I've not heard. To start, I will firstly cover the two factors that I found to be most significant in support of online education that persuaded me to believe that online education may be a good scenario for learning in the current way that we live today, but with some serious consideration. Then I'll bring into the discussion the negatives of online education and the impacts that it may have on us as individuals and as a society. So firstly, to the real positives of an online education system. Number one, our individual pace of learning. The most significant and possibly the most important factor for online education is the ability to go at our own pace. It's been shown that many students across the world struggle with keeping up with their peers on a daily basis. Learning programs have been created to help these students, but ultimately these programs rarely exist in schools and colleges. Students are expected to keep pace daily with their teacher and other classmates. However, in an online format, students can go at their own pace and learn the best way that they can. I'm sure that we can all relate to this as a positive need. So an online course allows us to access the information at our own pace and with the option to go back and forth to review as many times as we need. Another significant impact that online education has on society is the ability for the online education to be adapted to students with different learning styles. In an article written by Sarah Morse, she talks about the opportunity that teachers have to adjust their teaching style to fit the needs of their students. She is quoted as saying, "If developed properly, online courses may increase efficiency and course productivity. To supplement lectures, teachers can provide access to tools that facilitate discussion and active participation. In an online environment, teachers can reach students with different learning styles more easily. For example, they could post a video lecture for those who learnt best by listening, a diagram, photo or a video for those who learnt best by seeing, and an interactive game for those who learn best by doing." Additionally, by being able to adjust the different teaching styles, it also gives the opportunity to teachers to create personalised online assessments for their students. No teacher ever wants their students to fall behind and not graduate. By being able to individually work with students and find out specifically what each student's needs are, it allows teachers to make that important step of helping all their students to succeed. The final reason that online education is efficient is the ability to keep input confidential. Often students are concerned about asking questions because they're afraid of embarrassment from their peers. With the opportunity to ask questions online, one-to-one to their professors, a student no longer has to face that fear of embarrassment. Having confidentiality and trust with their teachers can allow students to focus on their own work and their educational needs instead of what others might think of them. Number 2, the environmental impact of online education. The second most significant factor of online education is the impact that it has on the environment, or rather, the effects that have been shown to have on the environment. The foundation of this factor rests on a study conducted by Dr. David Campbell and Dr. Elliot Campbell in 2009. The hypothesis that they were testing was whether online education would decrease the amount of CO2 admitted into the air. To conduct their study, they gathered 100 students from a variety of backgrounds and locations. These students took their classes in a face-to-face setting to discover how much CO2 emission could be prevented. All of the classes that were taken also had the option of being taken via an online setting. The study also varied in the distances travelled, the amount of travel, and how many times a week the classes were. Their goal was to get a general understanding and to have it not be weighted towards one specific classification. The study lasted one term. At the end of the term, they were able to come to a clear conclusion. Based off the variety of travel distances and how often, it was concluded that each student would produce anywhere between 100 and 350 pounds of CO2 emission. That accumulates to a total of nearly 5 to 7 tonnes of CO2 being prevented from entering the atmosphere over the course of a single term for those 100 students. That's the equivalent of approximately 12 people flying London to New York economy class. So to put this into the context of importance, it is projected that there will be about 56.4 million students attending elementary, middle and high schools in 2020 across the United States alone. Now we can do the maths. These are both compelling points for the positives of online learning, but we must also consider the negatives. One of the biggest impacts that online education has on society is its social and therefore emotional impact. When taking an online course, you can take it from the comfort of your own home. There's no need to get up early, no need to get ready for school, and you can simply complete the course on your own time and in your own setting. What this also entails, however, is that you can literally just stay at home and never need to enter a classroom for your entire course or educational lifetime. You never need to come face to face with your teacher or even your classmates. The social aspects of your education become zero. I think most of us can relate to this from either our own personal experiences or of those around us, especially during the past few months and the consequences of the pandemic and the need to work from home. In an article published by Ryan Hickey, he stated the obvious, that online education eliminates the ability to have those face-to-face interactions with a teacher. He then quotes an English professor from the University of Virginia who said that online education creates more of a monologue and not a real dialogue. The inability to communicate with your teacher on a daily basis takes away the opportunity to gain significant help on an assignment or a task, and therefore also the opportunity to build those relationships of trust and respect that you need with your professor or teacher. Another point that Hickey brings up is the necessity for self-discipline. He is quoted as saying, "The problem is the time management and the organisational skills necessary to stay on top of your work. Allocating an appropriate amount of time to complete each task and balance your coursework against other priorities in your life." Therefore, if you struggle with procrastination, then online education will only increase the temptation to procrastinate. There are still deadlines in an online education course, but with the difficulty and the need to prioritise and meet those deadlines, it only increases as you need to rely on yourself and your own self-discipline to not only remember, but to complete those assignments. The final point that Hickey mentions is the requirements of self-direction. He brings up this point in regards to meeting with an academic advisor or tutor. Most courses require that students meet with an advisor to set up their learning plan. Learning plans are designed to help students along the way in giving clear direction when receiving their education. If via an online format, a student must rely on themselves if they're receiving their entire course online. There is no opportunity to meet face-to-face with an advisor and get the help that you need. You must rely on yourself completely. What having self-direction means is that the student must be self-confident that they're able to understand and find everything that they need to graduate. There's no direct assistance and no help. The need for self-direction increases dramatically. Now, this might not be a significant factor for every student, but having the opportunity to meet with an academic advisor can only benefit a student along their path towards their educational goals. This brings me to a different story about the same topic. Hooray for Hot Black Coffee Cafe in Toronto. In 2017, they set about declining to offer Wi-Fi to their customers. There are, of course, other such cafes for sure, but it's Hot Black's reason for the electronic blackout that is cause for such praise. As its president, Jimson Birkenstock, explained, his aim was to get customers to talk to one another instead of being buried in their portable devices. It's about creating a social vibe, he told a New York Times reporter. We're a vehicle for human interaction, otherwise it's just a commodity. What a novel idea. Perhaps Mr. Jimson instinctively knew what medical science had been increasingly demonstrating for decades. Social interaction is a critically important contributor to good health and longevity. Personally, I don't need research-based evidence to appreciate the value of making and maintaining social connections. I experience it daily through my classes, but have really noticed the negative effects when those interactions are decreased. And as a myriad of studies have shown, those social interactions may also be helping to save our lives. As the Harvard Women's Health Watch reported, dozens of studies have shown that people who have satisfying relationships with friends, family and their community are happier, have fewer health problems and live longer. In a study of 7,000 men and women in California, which began in 1965, Lisa Berkman and Leonard Smythe found that people who were disconnected from others were roughly 3 times more likely to die during their 9-year study than people with strong social ties. This major difference in survival occurred regardless of people's age, gender, health practices, or physical health status. In fact, the researchers found that those with close social ties and an unhealthy lifestyle, such as smoking, obesity, and lack of exercise, actually lived longer than those with poor social ties but a more healthy living habit. And it was quickly added, needless to say, that people with both a healthy lifestyle and close social ties lived the longest of all. So my big question is, could working online be making my mental health worse? While being online can be helpful for your mental health, access to resources, learning at your own pace, lack of peer pressure and so much more, there might be times when using online tools could have a negative impact on your mental health, such as comparing yourself to others. Spending time in online communities and on social media sites can mean that you more frequently end up comparing yourself to others. This can negatively impact your self-esteem and how you view your life. If you find this happening to you, you could try limiting the amount of time you spend on these sites. You could also try taking a longer break from any of these sites that you find unhelpful. Feeling anxious or stressed. You might feel pressure to be constantly checking your social media accounts and taking part in online conversations, which can cause feelings of anxiety and stress. Comparing your life to others on social media can also make you feel anxious and stressed. Difficulty in sleeping. For some people, spending lots of time at night checking social media or other online sites disrupts their sleeping patterns. Some studies suggest to stop checking your phone by 10 p.m. or earlier to give yourself time to unwind before going to bed and to sleep. Feeling lonely. Some people find using online communities and social media a lonely experience, as it doesn't give them the same feeling of connection as an offline support. If you find that you're feeling lonely while using these sites, you could try connecting with people offline. For example, you could join a face-to-face peer support group. Feeling overwhelmed. Being a friend to other people online can feel great, but caring for someone who's going through a difficult time can also be very stressful and overwhelming, and could inadvertently be affecting your own well-being. A lack of social face-to-face interactions has been shown to damage our mental health. The emotional support provided by social connections helps to reduce the damaging effects of stress, whilst it can help us to foster a sense of meaning and purpose in life. Dr. Emma Chapala of Stanford Center for Research and Education, an author of the 2016 book The Happiness Track, wrote, "People who feel more connected to others have lower levels of anxiety and depression. Moreover, studies have shown that they also have higher self-esteem, greater empathy for others, and are more trusting and cooperative, and as a consequence, others are more open to trusting and cooperating with them." She goes on to explain that social connectedness generates a positive feedback loop of social, emotional, and physical well-being. She suggests that a societal decline in social connectedness may help to explain recent increases in reports of loneliness, isolation, alienation, and may be why loneliness has become a leading reason for people seeking psychological counselling. With the astounding fact that teenagers today are spending an average of 9 hours a day online, I have to wonder about the impact of online learning, whether it's done from home or in a classroom with other people. The lack of social and emotional interactions for a generation who are already spending more and more time online and who are known to be struggling with developing real-world connections. What can we expect for their futures and the world around them? In conclusion, online education is here to stay, but I hope that there will always be in-classroom and face-to-face settings offered at educational institutions. I appreciate that online education will continue to grow on a much larger scale every year, and I hope that it isn't expected that online education will completely replace the in-classroom setting, but understand and expect this growth. So we as a society need to be aware and watching for the impacts that this has on us and those around us. So that's our topic for today. I hope you found it interesting and helpful. Thank you for taking the time to listen. If you've enjoyed this episode, then subscribe and get new episodes sent to you weekly. You can do that for free via Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast and more. I appreciate everyone who takes the time to listen, so please subscribe, like, tell your friends and send me any comments, and even rate the podcast. Also, check out the Instagram page, Not Just Making the Tea, for more information and updates. For activities and resources, check out the Learning Hub on educationyala.com and subscribe. Thank you once again, keep safe and chat soon. Have a great day.